All right, guys. So I have a personal opinion. It's just my personal opinion. I understand not everyone's meant to be like a CEO, businessman, businesswoman, that whole thing. This is just my opinion. I think everyone should understand business to a decent degree. The older I get, the more it seems like business is just the language of the world, at least here in this country, because we're in a capitalistic society. But the older I get, the more like business stuff I learn, the more I'm able to translate certain things from like the rest of the world and I can understand it and I have a better idea of how to navigate things. But unfortunately, most people don't understand even the basic stuff about business. Not to say I know everything, I'm still learning just like everyone else, but I think we should make it more of a point to understand business from the time we're a little bit younger, not like kids and toddlers, but teens and pretty much up from there. Because when you understand business, you understand why certain things happen and maybe how they happen, depending on what you're talking about. But let's go ahead and dive right in a little bit. This shouldn't be too long, and we'll go and dig deeper into this. So when you're talking about the formal definition of business, you're referring to someone's occupation and the way that they make a living, literally. The most common form of business, if not the only way that business is practiced these days, is commerce, which is basically you buying and selling something, which is where you get e-commerce with websites and things like that. It's just you buying and selling stuff. You just use websites and apps to do it. That's all it means. And just like I said earlier, the older I get and the more like business stuff that I learn, the more I feel like not only do I understand the world a bit more, but I understand people a tad bit more as well. So not only at business, but I want to draw some connections here. What are some other areas that if you understand business, you'll understand some other things as well? Here are three things that, in my opinion, if you understand business to a decent degree, you'll understand these other areas to a decent degree as well. One, politics slash government. Keep in mind, politics doesn't inherently mean government. When you're talking about politics, like when people in the music industry say they ain't with the politics, that's why they started their own label and a bunch of other stuff. They're saying that they're not with the games and the dance of trying to solidify their spot or to prop themselves up or to dress themselves up just to essentially look better than the next person or more deserving of opportunity and things like that. They're not trying to dance around and kind of kiss behind to get what they need and get what they want. That's usually what they mean by politics. So politics is not necessarily the same as government. Now, if you're talking about government, that should be pretty obvious at all its levels, from the local level to the state level, and then you got the federal government as well. When it comes to government, those political figures or legislators, people that make the laws and have a hand somewhere in the political climate of the country, they need to understand business. It's not really negotiable. You can't really be a politician and not understand business because some of the laws that you may want to put into place, whether at a state level as well as mainly on the federal level, they're going to have repercussions, more so financially than anything. Like if you're trying to reroute money from, let's say, schools in the city to infrastructure, bridges, and whatnot, it's still beneficial to the city overall, but you just pulled money from schools that may need computers and other tools to be successful. So they need to understand that business. They need to have a business mindset of, well, we need to get money and get funding to get this other thing done to improve the city. But where are we going to get the money from if we're not going to get it from a donator? Where we're just going to have to take the money we have that we've put into one bucket and we have to take money out of that bucket, all of it, most of it, some of it, half of it, however much, we need to pull money from a source that we've invested into, take it out and put it here so that we can get this done. And you need to have a business mindset of, playing that game because there's going to be repercussions for that. Repercussions or consequences can be positive and negative. Repercussions slash consequences aren't inherently bad. I know when we hear those terms, we think bad, but you'll be surprised. There's kind of a positive and negative to everything. Consequences is like that too. So there can be good consequences in that if you decide to build bridges and other infrastructure, hospitals and whatnot, that's great for people that need them, transportation, getting to and from work. It'll beef up the value of the city. Maybe it'll become more of a tourist attraction, which draws more money, all that stuff. That's great. But now if you're talking about the locals, primarily when it comes to the kids and their learning experience and the future generation, shoot, Gen Alpha and I want to say Gen Alpha is already having an extremely hard time when it comes to just basic foundational level reading and math. More and more teachers are coming out about it. So that's the type of thing that we would see more of in general if, let's say, all schools in general in the United States had money pulled from them, and they put it somewhere else. and left education for children behind. But you will need to have that type of mindset of, okay, before I take that action, what will be the repercussion? And this will be one example of it. Which brings me to my second point, economics. And I kind of touched on this a little bit with the infrastructure example when it comes to politics and government and how people, when it comes to pushing laws and making certain decisions, how that would affect, a local neighborhood, city, state, where the case may be. Because for those who don't know, when you're talking about economy basically is about resources. Economy, the formal definition of economy or economics is the study of wealth and resources. Basically, how much wealth and resources does a particular place have? Most people say that the United States of America is the richest country in the planet right now. Then you have other countries that are doing just as well, fairly well, somewhere in the same area. That usually would be Canada, the UK, and I want to say Japan is doing pretty well in that same type of bracket as well. I don't know about China, but China is all over the place. Like, we're not even going to get into that. That's a whole other thing. But I think they're somewhere in that area as well, in terms of like they're financially and economically doing okay. But when you're saying they're economically doing okay, you're saying that they have a good amount of wealth and resources that allows their society to run smoothly, right? That's what that means when you're talking about economics. So when you're talking about business, and I know he's got a mixed crowd, but there's this one video clip that I remember watching with Dr. Umar Johnson on the episode of The Breakfast Club. I want to say a few years ago. He showed up and he was ranting about the correlation between economics and crime. And he had just one simple quote where he said, when job opportunities go up, crimes go down. When job opportunities go down, crimes go up. This is what economists study. They study the relationship of, like, when there's more opportunities, when people have what they need to get by and to sustain a decent life, they don't have a reason to commit crime unless they just want to. But when people actually don't have what they need, like we're seeing an increase in crime now these days, despite over 250,000 jobs opening up last month, which is still brand new. So we'll see if this improves anything. But even in my area, I can tell you over the last couple years since I've, lived in this area, my car's been broken into a few times. When I first moved into my new apartment complex, you can either park in the parking garage or you can park on the strip, on the street right here next to the building. There was one night, maybe a couple weeks or something after I moved in, when I tell you, and I parked right here on the side of my apartment so I can see my car. I like actually seeing my car. When I tell you, someone went on a spree of breaking into each car one by one, to the point where like no one was embarrassed about it. It was what it was. Everyone had a tarp or a trash bag or something taped to their window. It happened to everybody. The windows may have been different for each car, but it happened to pretty much everybody. And that type of thing is on the rise. I even remember I used to work in a clinic about 40 or so, 30, 40 minutes from where I live now. And I had a coworker who went outside at the end of the day. She was trying to start a car and couldn't start a car. Somehow, some way, mind you, the clinic we worked at was part of a big hospital. It was a big parking lot and everything. Somebody just, unfortunately, to her dismay, picked her car and got into the parking lot in the middle of the day. It was a sunny day, sunny all day, everything. They must have like waited out to see when the parking lot was going to be totally empty. Because by the time that she came back to the car that afternoon, the catalytic converter was completely gone out of her car. I'm not going to get into what a catalytic converter is. If you don't know, you can probably ask somebody, they'll let you know. But just know it's a very vital and important piece to the car, and you can't run the car without it, right? And it also makes a lot of money, which is why people tend to steal it. There's rare metals and things in it that criminals, when they sell it off, they can make a boatload of money off of it. That's why they do that. So my whole point being, we're seeing more and more of these like carjackings and car break-ins and taking of catalytic converters and whatnot. We're seeing more of this, and we're seeing more of different crimes. Crime has been going up steadily for the past few years because people can't get into these jobs, because layoffs are still happening. Even when I keep thinking that the layoffs are slowing down, every Monday, Tuesday, I go on LinkedIn and I'm seeing another decent layoff wave of 100-some people, 1,000 people from another big company. You already had Sports Illustrated, which completely threw away their entire staff. I believe that was last month or 2 months ago at this point. It just keeps on going. So the more that this happens, we can expect crime to continue to rise. And then the third thing, that if you understand business, well, I'm actually going to flip this. If you understand this thing, you'll understand business a bit more of today. And that's history. And that's something that I think through this channel I want to make it a point to work on. If that's something that you guys want to like go on that ride with me, or if there are topics that you particularly want me to focus on, let me know in the comment section below and I'll go ahead and do my research there. But I think when it comes to history, even outside of business, like history provides context into the modern world, its condition, where we're at, and why we're here. If you understand history a bit, it's a little different, because if you understand history, you'll understand the modern state of business a bit more instead of understanding business to understand history. And as I just talked about, I talked about this in a previous video, or in a different video. For Black Americans in particular, we tend to focus on white collar work more than anything else, as if blue collar work doesn't exist. And like I said before, I was personally hit with the ultimatum when I was younger of, well, either going to the military or going to college. No one said anything about blue collar work. No one said anything about trade school. Nobody said anything about any of that. And because I didn't see any of that in my childhood to any degree, I didn't give a thought to learn how to do things with cars, painting, carpentry. Now I'm knocking on 30. And granted, I don't want to work in blue collar. I enjoy what I do with tech on the service management and operation side of IT. You know, I want to grow with it. I think I want to go through IT and dance around, you know, move around as I develop into the field. But now I'm like, I would like to learn some basic carpentry, maybe some basic painting when I was younger. I don't even care if I was to make money off of it now. But now it doesn't make sense for me to do that when I would have to dedicate years away from what I'm doing full time with tech to entertain that type of thing, to gain that skill set. The only other way I can learn is if someone just willy-nilly taught me outside of trade school on their own time. And, you know, that's not very likely. So when it comes to understanding that history of why we completely left that alone, that allows me to understand the current landscape, and primarily when it comes to my demographic, my people, of how we navigate the world. You know, what opportunities should I look at? And, you know, if I had to give my opinion to primarily young men and little kids that are like in their teenage years still and still trying to figure things out, I would, you know, let them know, like, hey man, if you don't want to go white collar, it's cool. You want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you want to be some type of engineer, you want to be a coder or something else, entrepreneurship, that's totally fine. But do not forget that this opportunity is here. This other opportunity, this other lane. You don't even have to stay there, but you can get that foundation so that if you get a degree and then you get a corporate job and that corporate job falls through, well, now you know how to cut hair. Now you know how to do electrician type stuff. Now you can do carpentry, you know what I'm saying? Apply drywall and paint walls and do whatever you do, right? And you can rely on that when the white collar work that you got through your degree falls through, especially in the economic times that we're in now, like I said, with economy. That's what I would let them know. And young men would ask me, well, why haven't we heard about this before? I'd be able to shed just a tad bit of light on the reasoning for that because of the Great Migration. But again, I covered all this in a different video. So go ahead and feel free to look at the video where I cover the Great Migration and basically paint the picture of Black Americans, where we were at one point, why the Great Migration happened, and ultimately why we did a 180 on blue collar work when at one point that was our bread and butter. But now it seems like most of us don't even know it exists. So I'm going to leave the video off with this. Here are 3 basic like business concepts that I think people in general, like everyone, should have a decent understanding of. Because again, even outside of work, these things apply. Like the older I get, the more I see that this stuff still applies. 1, the law of supply and demand. Law of supply and demand, I mentioned this in another video as well, but just real quick, the law of supply and demand basically kind of like what we said with economics when I made the Umar Johnson reference. Like he said, when you have enough jobs, crime goes down because people don't need to commit crime. But when you don't have enough jobs, crime goes up. Law of supply and demand focuses on when you have certain resources, opportunities, and things that people need or want, the supply, the demand can either have a direct relationship with it, meaning if the supply goes up, the demand goes up. When the supply goes down, the demand goes down. Or they can have what's called an inverse relationship, meaning if supply goes up, but demand goes down, or if demand goes up, but supply goes down. Those are 2 types of relationships it can have. But generally, law of supply and demand focuses on when you have a certain supply, like when something, like basically it focuses on rarity. The law of supply and demand essentially focuses on how rare something is. And usually the more rare something is, the more valuable it is. But if it's more common, whether car brands, clothing brands, and the like, and everyone can wear it, it's not going to be deemed that valuable. It's not, you know, as rare. You're not going to stick out as much. You're going to be more part of the crowd. That's why you get like supercars, hypercars, and supercars are known to be a pain in the butt to, maintain when it comes to maintenance. But if you have it, you're gonna get attention. If you pull up in the orders here, I saw an Urus over here before, like months ago, you're gonna get attention. People are bound to just watch you drive by. Lamborghini, same thing. What's it called? Bentleys. You go to another section of the city, you can see three Bentleys within a few blocks of each other, and everyone's gonna look because that's not a common car, you know. So the supply when it comes to those luxury vehicles may be low, meaning there's not as many of them, but the demand is high. People would love to have those cars. But then if you have plenty of supply from sneakers, clothes, and all those things, food, it's common, the demand's not gonna be as high. Yeah, people are gonna mess with it, but the demand's not gonna be as high because like everyone can get it. I can get chicken nuggets from, Mickey D's or Jack in the Crack or somewhere else 5 minutes up the street. KFC, 5 minutes up the street. I can walk right across here. I love me some tacos. I love me some tacos. But I can go right here to the gas station and get some tacos. You know what I'm saying? It's a very common thing. But if you're talking about those super bougie like meals that are somehow crazy expensive, but they're like this small on a big old white plate, I guess the experience, the price tag, and all this stuff, it's rare. So the demand will be high, but the supply will be low, meaning not as many people can get access to that. But I'm not worried about that. But law of supply and demand. That's one concept I think everyone should kind of like dabble into and get a good understanding of. Two, commerce and bartering. I know bartering is essentially a lost art at this point in terms of like how to officially conduct business, or at least, from what I've seen. But I think it's something that we should be willing to go back and dabble into. For those who don't know, bartering was when you traded something for something. This was prior to paper money particularly becoming the main thing of the planet and just coins and all this other stuff. It was prior to that, because now that's commerce. That's when I give you currency for whatever product or service that I'm demanding, that I'm requesting. But at one point, bartering was the name of the game, meaning, okay, you won't give me that PlayStation controller that I need. Okay, what's something of similar value that I can give you that you can benefit from? Okay, how about this? You give me your brand new DualShock 4 PS4 controller because mine broke and I need one, and I'll give you two games that you have never owned, you've never played, that you want to play, and I've already beaten. You can keep them permanently, and we can do that. DualShock 4 controllers on average run about $60. One game, if it's used, you can argue 40, depending on how old the game is and things like that. So if you throw in like a high end 2 games, one controller, that can be an equal trade. That's bartering, So commerce, and these days e-commerce / bartering, is another thing that I think people should be wanting to touch on and to exercise with a bit. This last one is pretty important because we literally exercise it all the time. We just don't realize it. Most people don't know what this is called. When you give up something for something else, or when you give up somebody for somebody else, it's called an opportunity cost. What was the cost of this opportunity? Hey, I have the opportunity to present my music live and to perform my music live at a big venue. But what was the opportunity cost? You lost out on interacting with people, maybe consistent day one fans, the money that you could have got from another venue, your more regular routine venue, your routine crowd. You gave that up. Now, most people would say, well, if there's a bigger venue and whatnot, it's better, it's more money. True, but maybe you're dealing with a different audience. They may not react to your music as well versus your routine audience at your local spot reacts to your poetry or your music. Like it's the best thing in the world every time. These are some of the things that you're giving up. You may give up, and it's not just money. You may give up, like in that example, familiarity. You may not be as in touch with that new crowd as you were in touch with your old one. You may have to get used to new people when it comes to, let's say, the band that you're using, the live band. There may be a drummer at your old place that does things a certain way that you like, or the accompanist, a pianist that knows how to, improvise when doing certain songs in the way that you like, and they just get it. But if you try to do that at the new venue with these new people, it's probably going to rub things the wrong way. That's opportunity cost. What did you give up to entertain this other situation, right? And if anything, that should be number one, because again, that's something that is part of life. You have to give something up every time you make a decision. It's very rare when you make a decision and there's no like downside to it. Like, okay, I can talk to this girl, and maybe if I shoot my shot, things can go well with her. But her homegirl look good as heck too. You know what I'm saying? Like, But if I try to talk to her and her homegirl's right there, and let's say old girl turns me down, what's the likelihood of the best friend being like, okay, cool, hey, no harm, no foul. Hey, I want to shoot my shot at you. She's like, you just try to talk to my girlfriend. What's wrong with you? You know what I'm saying? There's very little likelihood of you entertaining an opportunity or pursuing an opportunity and not giving something up on the back end. So that's opportunity cost, but most people don't know what that's called, and they don't know that that's what that is. So if anything, in my opinion, that's the most important thing to get people's head like wrapped around, because it's literally impossible to avoid it. If you make any type of decision in your life, you're using the principle of opportunity cost. You just don't realize it. So yeah, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and leave the video here. If you have any feedback or comments for me, share that with me in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.